Inside the Arena is presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sportsbook.
Welcome to Inside the Arena, your source for everything off the ice, off the court, and outside the field of play. With your hosts, KOMO Sports Director Niko and KOMO Senior Reporter Chris Daniels.
76 straight, baby.
Wow.
We're back inside the arena, and we're going to talk about a lot, good and bad this week. Of course, the top story is our beloved friend, Lenny Wilkens, has passed away. We're going to talk about him in the course of this show, his impact on the community, and the legacy he leaves behind. He passed away this week at 88 years old, and we're going to talk about the statue unveiling that happened in June and how important it was for people to show their love and appreciation to him. That really is a story that people are going to be talking about for weeks and weeks and months to come, as well as another one on the flip side of that. We're going to talk with Senator Maria Cantwell today. Sat down with her to talk about NIL and the future of college sports. There are a couple of different acts that are floating around Washington, D.C., along with all the other stuff floating around Washington, D.C. right now. But she gets into detail about what she wants to accomplish with the SAFE Act to reform college NIL. That is coming up later in the show, Niko.
Yeah, something's got to be done about that.
Yes.
It's just getting a little out of hand. And what people don't talk about, and it's really affecting the fandom of your average person that just wants to sit down and watch a college football game. They have no clue who these guys. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yes, we're going to talk about that again. A jam-packed show this week. Everything going on off the ice, off the court, off the field of play. But as we always do, we like to start with four corners.
Let's touch them all.
What's good? What's bad? Off the ice, off the court, off the field of play. Niko, I know you have some opinions.
Yeah, well, let's start with the good. And this isn't Niko ranting. This is all positive. PWHL is here. The Seattle Torrent, like the name, like the colors. I like that our city, for the most part, has similar colors for all of its teams. It's always cool to have that symmetry. It just kind of feels Northwestern-y anyway. But I'll say this, it's just, I was at the first ever practice, full squad practice they had, and understanding that we're getting into games and all that. And so all these milestones that feel crazy significant right now, they'll always be, but like all of a sudden there's a next big moment. Oh, here's the first game. Well, here's your first playoff game, et cetera, et cetera. But it was really cool to watch that first practice. It reminded me of watching the first Kraken practice because you had this feeling that you were watching history, and that's what we are. And I love that every one of the players I was able to talk to said the same thing, that they're so excited to launch that history, obviously, but even more so because they know how Seattle sports fans really support every one of their teams. And they also love the idea that they can be this trailblazing team for women's sports in Seattle, a city that, of course, supports women's sports arguably better than anybody else in the world. And this is, I've been able to have some really cool conversations this year, whether it be Jessica Campbell, Sue Bird, people that have trailblazed in women's sports, right? And one of the things, the common ground they've always said is that, of course, and obviously it impacts young women because they can see somebody like them succeeding in the sport they want to play in. But the other cool part of it is for young boys as well, that, hey, this is normal, that women in this spotlight in professional sports is normal. And that's something the PWHL, the Torrent players, said in that first practice. So it was cool to hear that again, because it's like a common theme. You love to hear it, and it doesn't happen unless these players are laying the groundwork as they are. So history made, they're on the ice. Let's go.
Love the sweaters too. Love the color scheme. Yeah. I like the sweater the way it is right now, with just Seattle across the front, and not the logo necessarily, but I think the Torrent name is going to grow on people. The fact that we have the Torrent and the Storm in Climate Pledge Arena, along with the rain down the road, I think is kind of funny that we have a climate theme.
We have a lot of climate going on there
with our teams. I will say, I also think it's good, and it grew on me after a couple of days. Vancouver's PWHL team is going to be the Golden Eyes.
That is cool.
And what's also interesting is Vancouver is going to have their own arena, the old Pacific Coliseum, where the Canucks did play out by P&E Park, which we'll talk about for another reason in just a second. It just pops on the ice.
Yeah.
And I love the idea from a marketing perspective, which is what people talk about away from the ice. the fact you're going to talk about golden goals and the eyes have it and the birds win the game. There's just so many different things they can do from a marketing perspective. I think they nailed it with that name. And I didn't even know that that's a native bird to British Columbia. So a lot of it makes sense for Vancouver. And that, I think, is going to be a rivalry, Vancouver and Seattle, especially when the Torrent have Captain America Hillary Knight.
Yeah, and that was really cool. They got Hillary. I'll be honest with you, I like the Golden Eye nickname because at first I'm like, oh, it's James Bond.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people thought.
But then I found out what it really meant, and of course I liked it even more. Really, really well done there. It is a budding rivalry, and the players I talked to from the Torrent were like, yeah, like, it's going to be a rivalry. And they also said that, a lot of the other teams certainly aren't happy about how the expansion draft went. You mentioned Hillary landing here in Seattle, so the Torrent is going to have a target on their back as the new team, but also a team that's pretty darn good right out of the gates.
And I think a Torrent can basically swallow up a Golden Eye if the Golden Eye is in the wrong place.
Well,
the wrong time.
Golden Eye can't find any fish in a Torrent, right?
Right. So there you go.
Yeah.
There's another marketing line for somebody. Yeah. What don't you like?
Yeah. Okay. Here comes the rant right now. I'm going to start what I don't like with something that I like. I don't like the reaction to it. I think that Jetfish handled the rumors about his potential departure from the University of Washington in a perfect fashion. I have my notes here. He didn't make any promises. How many times have we seen that coach be like, I'm not going anywhere, I love it here, and then it becomes a meme because a month later they're gone. And I'm not trying to pile on because every coach does it. But you think about how all in Jake Dickert was at WSU. I'm not leaving, I'm here, and then he left. You can't blame the guy for leaving. It's part of life. But it's the fact that he did, he kind of said it that way, right?
Yeah.
Of course, online, there was an article that came out the other day, and it certainly had been a rumor for weeks. It's like, oh, Jetfish is definitely leaving Washington because his wife and daughters are still in Arizona. They don't want to be in Seattle. And Jed comes out and addresses it head on. And I love this. And it's a response that any father can relate to. He says, yeah, my wife and daughter in Arizona because my 16-year-old's been in 5 schools in 8 years. And he didn't want to make her do another one. You know what I'm saying? And I think that you hear that, and I think even people that were like, hey, oh, okay, because then your parent light kicks on.
Right.
He didn't let it fester. He addressed it. I love that. He was honest about loving Washington, the young roster he built. He said, Damon Williams could be, when it's all said and done, one of the best QBs to come through the area. But what I'll say is what I liked that he did, he never said, I'm definitely saying. He made no guarantees. He never said, I'm here for the long haul. Maybe he is, maybe not. But he didn't make that guarantee that can come back to bite it. He just said, when I make that decision, whatever that decision is, it's not because my family's in Arizona doesn't want to be here. It's and I just thought he handled it perfectly. So, okay, well, how is this negative? Boy, oh boy, you post that video on social media and it's like, everybody's like, oh, he's gone. That may very well be true. That's the point. That's literally the point of the post. He handled it. He didn't promise anything. Arizona fans, he said the same thing to us, then he left. Yeah, I would hope he did because it means he has the same principles. That's not a bad thing. That's not and what it ultimately sums up to is like, that's the negatives of social media these days, right? It's like people don't read the post or people are just like half reading. I don't know what it is.
Well, and if you would have said that after a Husky win in Wisconsin, the reaction might have been different than saying it after a
sure.
What has been the worst loss this Husky season.
Yeah, no question about it. So I really admire the way he handled that. And it's similar to how if you might remember when he was hired in January of 24, he didn't make that whole, this is my dream job, we're here to stay. He's like, the goal is to stay because it means you're winning. But he's like, but as long as we're here, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. He never said I'm here for 5 years, even 3 potentially. But so listen, I think a lot of people say there's a decent chance he probably does leave from one of those jobs, and that's a testament to the job he has done at UW. After Kalen DeBoer left so late in that cycle, it kind of let the cupboard bare a little bit. So I think he's done a really nice job. And the idea that he's mentioned with these other gigs, UCLA, Florida, whatever it might be, it's a testament to the job he did. And again, I thought he handled that perfectly.
Well, and it's going to continue to be a conversation just depending on how crazy these salaries get for coaches. And that ties into what we're going to talk about later on with Senator Cantwell. But the idea that these coaches are making $10, $11 million a year now with all this guaranteed money, that if they get fired, they're sitting on a wallet or a purse with $50+ million down at LSU. The University of Washington, given their stability now with the Big Ten Conference and the potential deal that's going to be done there, locking in grant of rights, you would think that for somebody it's going to be a destination job where they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
But it's there's funny money being thrown around right now.
That's just it. I mean, listen, for Husky fans out there, Jed's done a nice job. If he does move on, which is very well possible, they're going to be okay. They're going to find somebody.
Well, the other thing I was going to say that's just negative this week, because but it also helps understand what's going on with the Sounders, is the Vancouver Whitecaps are seriously talking about trying to find a new stadium in Vancouver, and MLS Commissioner Don Garber has been in town actively saying they need a new stadium, that they need something besides BC Place or whatever it's called now, GM Place, BC Place. There is a lease that's up there in December, and they've had issues with the Whitecaps and going to a game up there. It's, I would say, a significantly more sterile environment than what you experience at Lumen Field, but they haven't been able to fill that dome that has a 55,000 seat capacity for really any regular season Whitecaps match. They've actually had to put a playoff game on the road because they had something else booked there. So there's a lot of conversation back and forth about building something out at the P&E Fairgrounds, which is where the Golden Eyes, see, full circle, or going around the bases. That's where they're talking about building something, but it helps you understand what the Sounders are talking about with building a new stadium as well. As there's going to be, I think, some changes here in the next few years within the MLS to maximize the revenues. Garber has already told the province out of British Columbia that the revenue isn't there based on the lease for the Whitecaps. The Whitecaps are up for sale. All sorts of elements. I've got to believe if anybody's a Vancouver Whitecaps fan, they are certainly hoping that Ryan Reynolds wants to come in and make them the new Wrexham FC of the MLS. But lots of stadium uncertainty there, just north of the border, just like right now in Seattle.
Yeah. I don't envy fans in that spot. You've covered it at length, and anybody in Seattle can reference the mid to late 90s. You know, it's not the fans have, other than maybe voting for something that may be up, they're kind of just stuck in the middle, and I hate that for the fans. It's kind of come to that situation.
Well, let's take a turn. We'll get to Senator Cantwell in just a second, but it's something that we like to do every week, and that's the Supersonic Minute. And normally we would play a buzzer, and normally we'd talk about what's going on with the NBA returning to Seattle, but I think everybody has heard by now that Lenny Wilkens, the three-time Hall of Famer, head coach, player, was also a coach on the Dream Team, inducted 3 separate times. Really, the Godfather, as some have referred to him, the ambassador for basketball in the community in the city of Seattle, and really Western Washington. He passed away at the age of 88 on Sunday. And all of this comes just a few months after, 4 months after his statue was unveiled outside Climate Pledge Arena.
I see how
it's hard to put into words in a short amount of time Lenny's life and what he accomplished off the court as well as on the court. I think that he and I have talked over the years, Niko, and you know this, about how important he felt it was to participate with nonprofits and groups that were trying to help young people, whether it be the Odessa Brown Children's Clinic or our friends at Rise Above. And I just thought it would be good to play a few minutes here of kind of the retrospective on Lenny's life and what he has meant to this community.
I was introduced to Odessa Brown when I first came here. I would give to the Odessa Brown Children's Clinic. And I got to meet eventually Ben Danielson.
I just remember kind of that nervous feeling before you're about to meet one of your heroes for the first time, and just the kind of way it feels when he first walks into a room. Well, he understands, probably from his own lived experience, probably because he has mentored and supported so many other young people along the way. He just understands the value, the cherished value of the potential of a young person's life.
Lenny, who as a child was on welfare, raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Odessa Brown Clinic in Seattle's Central District, millions more for Seattle Children's Hospital, with Costco co-founder Jim Sinegal, all in the interest of providing health care regardless of the ability to pay. And you share that passion.
Yes, I like to. I think, if I have some role models like Lenny, it makes it easier to do that.
He is great, but he's also good. He's deeply good. He's the greatest good person I think I've ever known in my life, because he cares so deeply about other people.
I'm moved by it. I see how it makes my wife smile, my family. It makes me feel pretty good. Like I said, I think I've been blessed. I've been given opportunity. I think my mom probably deserves all the credit because she had many sacrifices to make as a young woman, and she made them.
And she'd be proud of you if she could see that.
She'd be proud of me. Yeah, she would be.
Lenny Wilkens, 88 years old, passing away this past week. There will be likely a public memorial service that will keep you informed on if that does indeed happen.
I think that you said it perfectly when there's not any show link that can possibly do somebody like Lenny Wilkens justice. But the one thing I would say is I think he's in that stratosphere with people that made a difference both in their respective sport and arguably, maybe even not even arguably, much more off it. It's somebody like Muhammad Ali, and Lenny's right there as far as the impact they had on society. And there's certainly others too. But it's like when you do that, you'll truly never be forgotten. No question.
And I hear him referred to as a father figure as well, and pulling certain NBA players underneath his wing, and people who are working with nonprofits under his wing, and making them better people. So
yeah,
we are going to switch gears and talk again about the NIL conversation. Senator Maria Cantwell was kind enough to sit down and talk about the SAFE Act versus the SCORE Act, two acts that are in front of lawmakers in D.C. when they actually get back together in D.C. and talk about these things. And you'll hear from her right after the break.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head up to Hawks Peak Sports Bar and Grill at Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel. The place to be for game days. With over 60 TVs, you won't miss a single play, no matter where you sit. Grab your crew, your favorite bites, and your go-to drink, and catch every touchdown, dunk, or goal in style. Hawks Peak Sports Bar and Grill, where every seat is the best seat in the house. Learn more at snowcasino.com.
All right, so we're talking NIL reform, SCORE Act versus SAFE Act. You're in favor of the SAFE Act. How does the SAFE Act protect athletes and fans?
Well, the most important thing is to preserve college sports. And while it's a big industry these days and a lot of money, there are new laws that have taken into effect in the Supreme Court decisions, and then a settlement agreement that basically has said that athletes deserve to have rights for their own name, image, and likeness. And so that is a big change, and what we're trying to say is that in the SCORE Act, we want to preserve what the courts have said are those rights for athletes, but we also want to make sure, as you probably saw in the Northwest, the big Pac-12 shift has left a lot of schools without the resources they had in the past. So allowing those schools to basically get as much as they can out of broadcast rights would also allow us to keep women's sports and Olympic sports. And that's kind of the premise of the SAFE Act, to protect women and Olympic sports, and also to protect athletes' rights and make sure there's enough scholarship in the system to do that.
So how is the SAFE Act different than the SCORE Act?
Well, the SCORE Act literally erases those rights. It doesn't give the rights to athletes that the settlement agreement and that the Supreme Court in a 9-0 decision basically said are their rights. And we think that's important to continue to codify and follow, because the court decision in a very big case called the Alston case gave those students, and we've had lots of lawsuits over this, so let's move forward with predictability. Let's put more money into institutions, not just UW, but WSU, and let them continue to have the diversity of sports that we'd like to see in our college system. And some of these schools, since these kinds of debates have cut, thousands of scholarships, thousands of slots for athletes. So someday we're going to end up with an Olympics where we're not doing too well. And we'd rather fix the problem, put more money into the athletic system, give the students their rights to have their name, image, and likeness, and move forward with the codification of that.
It is the Wild West right now, and I think there's probably some Husky fans who look at this and say, hey, our revenues are top 10, top 15, top 20 of any university in the country, and Washington State is having their issues, and Gonzaga's been relatively stable, although the world is changing. Why not keep things the way they are?
Because right now we're losing, because we've had these decisions, these cases that said that these athletes are due the ability to take their name and their image and likeness and do something with it. And the decisions that have been made in settlement agreements concluded that those rights should also focus on the future of college Olympics and college sports and Olympic sports. So it left a lot that was not determined. Things like how long can a college athlete play, what are their abilities to transfer, and we'd like to put more predictability in the system. But under this proposal, not only would WSU make more money, so would Gonzaga, and so certainly would UW. And last time I checked, UW definitely wanted to see more money. But the whole system is a system that is not just about football or basketball. It is all about the dozen or more sports that institutions also want to offer. Institutions like WSU or UW attract people because of the schools and the sports that they have. So we want that to be robust. We don't want to see that decline.
So you think the SCORE Act, if it was approved as is, and there's a big question of whether that would ever happen, but as is, it would work to eliminate Olympic sports and,
yes.
and more women's sports,
yes.
and create more inequities between
yes.
universities?
Yes.
And the SAFE Act wouldn't do that?
That's correct.
I know that the SAFE Act talks about giving the ability to all athletes to get NIL and a 10-year scholarship guarantee, as well as 5 years medical coverage. How do you come up with those numbers?
Well, these are almost standard by what the big Division I institutions are doing. But in talking to the universities, talking to the athletes, talking to the NCAA, this is the policy that makes the most sense. Not every college student graduates in 5 years. Some of them like the ability to come back and finish up, depending on what their chances are in other athletic endeavors. But it is a policy that if you have it uniform across the United States, it creates some certainty and predictability into the system. And what we're seeing is lawsuits because we haven't put that predictability on the table. We want to reduce and get rid of the lawsuits and have rules that people on a national basis are even and everybody's competing on the same level playing field.
I can see somebody making an argument that, okay, a 10-year scholarship guarantee, 5 years medical coverage, that's just going to boost the cost for universities.
Well, as I said, mostly that's what close to what people are doing today. But when you have one state do this is what your NIL rights are, and another state do something different, it creates, a hodgepodge of a system. And then somebody says, well, why is that student getting this and why am I not getting that? And so it's just better to have uniformity in the system. So I think I don't hear any complaints from most institutions about those provisions. Those aren't the things they complain about.
Well, explain if you can the idea that the sports broadcast element of this, that's where this money has gotten out of control, frankly, with the Big Ten and Big 12 and ACC and Pac-12, and it was what led to the Pac-12's demise was sports broadcast. There is a Sports Broadcast Act. How does that get fixed within all of this?
Well, we used to have a lot of competition in the sports dynamic, and everybody shared in that, and these divisions shared that revenue across those conferences. Now, we have two big, the SEC and Big Ten, who have most of the institutions and lock in most of the revenue. And the consequence of that is you might only have a few schools that are constantly making it to that playoff. I think we all like the competition where everybody has a chance every year to compete. And we certainly don't want people making shortchange decisions and cutting off those other athletic endeavors in their institutions just to focus on football.
Cody Campbell, is he backing your idea?
Well, you'd have to ask him, but I think he likes the Broadcasting Act idea too, because I think as he sees the challenge of how do you keep enough resources in the system for everybody so that we are producing those Olympic and women athletes in schools all across the United States as opposed to maybe just a few. That's an important concept that I think a lot of different people are behind. But yeah, he's one of the people behind that idea.
Any chance you could write in some language about gambling on college athletics, given the concern now with legal gambling and what we've seen in the NBA and also in college athletics?
I listen, I think the NBA, we sent a letter to them saying, look, you need to take care of business here. And we certainly think the NCAA should slow down on trying to say that athletes can gamble, even if it's not in their sport area, but something else. I think we want the system to be free of any kind of concern that is being influenced by gambling.
Should Congress be involved in trying to do something with college athletics and the NCAA and reform?
I do think that the moment has arrived where the legal system has made decisions and it has changed the system, and the system is being changed by outside forces. This notion of how we got to a college playoff system and bowl games, and now, maybe, 8 or 9 teams that might be the ones always considered in the bowl games. I think that's something to pay attention to. This is big money. This is about competition. It's certainly about making sure that we preserve women's opportunities and certainly college for those who want to try to be in the Olympics. So that's really important to preserve. And these changes that, again, were made by court decisions and giving student athletes rights have to be addressed, or else the system, if it continues to move down to this level, you'll just really have just 2 big divisions. And we'd all like to think we would do well in those divisions anyway. But the whole ecosystem is what we care about, having sports all the way across the United States and having true competition when any team, any year, can produce a winning football Saturday event.
So you think the SAFE Act would help the University of Washington as much as it would Washington State University, Gonzaga, Eastern Washington, which does play Division I sports as well?
It would definitely produce more revenue for those schools. It would put law into place that would create more predictability, have less lawsuits, but also create more revenue by allowing the schools to pool their media rights and basically maximize the coverage. It also protects the consumer and it says that you can't just take this content and hijack it and put it on ESPN or some high-end cable that you have to pay for. It says in our market, we get to see this content. You get to show it on KOMO, or a local regional broadcaster is able to show that content. And these are important consumer issues because what's happening now, these same people who want to sell their university assets to private equity, the next thing they will be doing is putting it all behind a paywall and really affecting consumers and raising the price and costs. And we like the fact that, that the notion that these games could be available across the United States and maximized for viewership in the local markets is really an important concept.
I really feel like I shortchanged Seattle U there as well,
okay.
which is also playing Division I.
With Scooball getting there.
All right, that's Senator Maria Cantwell. If you're watching on television, you want to watch the full interview with Cantwell on this particular issue, unedited, you can watch that on the YouTube website or on all the audio platforms that we're on.
Yes.
But the difference, a couple of things she says between the SAFE Act, which she's backing, and the SCORE Act. She says the SAFE Act would permit 2 transfers with immediate eligibility, additional transfers upon mutual agreement, or the elimination of a sport. The other act gives the NCAA broad authority to set those transfer rules, and so she wants to crack down on that. She also says that the NIL rights under the SAFE Act would establish one national standard, ensure athletes have rights to enter into NIL agreements of their choosing. The SCORE Act doesn't do that. There's agent regulations in terms of capping fees. There's medical coverage guarantees under the SAFE Act that don't exist in the SCORE Act, she says.
It's important.
10 years for athletes to complete their degree. The SCORE Act only provides 7. And then preserving Olympic sports and women's sports as well in small schools, she says, would be done under the SAFE Act, not the SCORE Act. So there's a lot to discuss there.
There is. Yeah, and I applaud the senator. This is an issue that people it's so deep and it's so hard to tangle. Like, you can find something and then another problem's going to pop up. So props to tackling it, and whatever it might be, there's got to be, as you and I both agree, at some point, some down the line, some kind of legislation done on it.
It was a jam-packed show.
It was, and the only thing we're missing right now is we're going to bring it to you, David Lee.
You've been listening to Inside the Arena with Niko and Chris. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time.
Inside the Arena was presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sports book.